So, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first ECRB meeting of the new year. Happy New Year to you all. Apologies, we are running slightly late due to a small technical issue. So we will now start the meeting. So we'll move straight on to agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 21st of November 2024, pages 3 to 6. I propose that the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of October 21st of November 2024 are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Everybody in agreement? Thank you, members. Agenda item 2 is question time. I have not received any questions from the public. Agenda item 3 is questions asked by members understanding orders 7(3) and 7(5). I have not received any questions from members. Agenda item 4 is to advise of any other items which the chairman has decided to take as urgent elsewhere on the agenda. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 5 is declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda. Are there any other interests to declare? None. Thank you, members. Agenda item 6 is presentation of petitions under Standing Order 35. I have not received any petitions. So we'll move on to the substantive agenda item, which is number 7, reports to the Director of Environment and Transport, application for a public path diversion order, footpaths E53 and E54, parts of at Edmund Thorpe, is pages 7 to 48. And just for members' information, the agenda was expected to be larger than this. There were a couple of planning applications we were expecting, but they were unable to be brought forward in time, hence why we have a very short agenda today. So it's just one of those things that happens occasionally. So I now hand over to Edwin McWilliam, Access Manager, Environmental and Transport Department. Please take it to the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks everybody. This relates to agenda item 7 on your papers. It's a proposed diversion order of a footpath with an ancillary path as well at Edmund Thorpe in the... Just get the plan out. There's the plan on the screen you see in front of you. There is a plan in your papers as well. Effectively, the route, if you see on the right-hand side, there are a series of paths, 2 paths, which are solid black. Those are intended to be deleted, got rid of, and the route is to be replaced with a route that goes from C through E to F at the top there. And there's also a spur from another short path, which would link into the new route at a new point just on the corner there, so people can aim for it and reach the path. Now, the reason for the application is in relation to privacy matters, both for the curtilage of a property, a house, and also for a business that runs down the track as well. They're wanting to actually put a gate across there for security purposes as well. If I go into the next photos, I think that'll explain the situation a little better. This is at the point from the big field I was talking about earlier, where the path goes over a stile and goes through the curtilage of this property, which is a church farm, I believe. And it's in very close proximity. Well, it's right next to the property itself. So obviously there is a closeness both to the owners and also for people wanting to use the path. And then secondly, at the other end, where it comes out on the route in Edmund Thorpe itself, it's coming down that track you see on the left-hand side. It comes out here. Now, here is a bit of an oddity about this particular application. No fault to the applicant in any shape or form. But this last tiny bit down this track isn't actually recorded as public highway. So it's a rather problematical issue for us as well in terms of... I just want to add the owners occupiers haven't stopped anyone using the route. It's not recorded as public highway. So if it was diverted, that would resolve one of our issues as well. And that's also the track that leads to just to the right there, where there's a business which also has deliveries and other aspects during the daytime. This plan just shows how between the main route that goes through Edmonthorpe there, the carriageway and the paths as they exist currently, there is this gap. Now, getting back to the issues in hand, clearly from the applicant's view, and something we have to consider at the time of the application, is that if anyone makes an application, it must be in the interest of, in this case, it's in the interest of the landowner or occupiers concerned. Twofold, as I've mentioned. One is reducing the, I wouldn't say it's conflict, but there's people closely walking by the property. And secondly, having the business and having security for business. And I think we're all aware in general terms of how difficult it is in countryside areas to store all sorts of materials at particular sites. If they are open, it does cause concerns. Now, the path itself, the alternative route, as shown on the plan, that is now intended to come out at this point, where you see a slight gap in the hedge. That'll all be cut back, and the occupier has undertaken both to put in a kissing gate rather than the style that existed previously at the other point, and also maintain that thereafter. Now, from that point, there is clearly the aspect that as you come out onto the carriageway there, if you wish to go right back to exactly where the path comes out currently, you then have to turn right and go down the lane there before you rejoin that point. There is, it's a little bit green, as you see in the picture there, but there is a footway between those 2 points. So you are segregated from the traffic just to get back to that point. I'll go through this again when we get back to the map. Again, to give you some idea, the diverted path is going through the same field that the existing route goes through before it veers off into the onto the property's curtilage. And that's a very open field, reasonably flat, and people would just naturally go from A to B in that context. Now, one other thing that has come up recently, I mentioned in terms of the statutory requirements that are need to consider, there is another statutory requirement which, if any objections are held to the order once we make it held, and that is whether the path, the new path, is substantially less convenient for the public to use. And again, I wish I had a perfect answer to you to know what substantially means, but I think in general terms, if we keep it simple, you know where I'm coming from in terms of that. This is a fairly small diversion compared to many we actually undertake. But the question is how convenient or inconvenient is it for users using that path to actually who are currently using the path? On the other side, and this is just guidance from government, this came out last year, actually the year before last now, and this is guidance that's been brought forward. It's just raising the profile with order making authorities of, if you like, the legitimacy of people applying for diversions to take minor highways such as these away from their households and curtilage for a variety of reasons. And I think the reasons are fairly obvious, both pro and against. But there is a bit of guidance from government at the moment with the orders to actually, when we come up with these sorts of proposals, that we should actually listen to carefully to what the issues are facing the occupiers in terms of that particular site. If I go back, then I'll get there. To go forward now. In terms of whether it's convenient or not convenient, you can see from, actually, I might actually get up at this point. All right, Chair. I'll use my name as well.
Can I just interrupt? Could you grab a microphone, because we do have to service online listeners as well. Thank you.
Do you need to turn mine off? Yeah. Here's the path as it currently sits. Finishes there. We have this gap, but everyone's using it at the moment. Comes through to here. So if you do want to get back exactly to here, you can see before it is just that, now it is going around to this point. Conversely, and on the other side, and I think this certainly applies to most people that use the path, they're likely to be going up here and then going off up to Wymondham that way, or they can use any of the back paths here to go to any part of the village. There are actually 3 separate links going in after that particular point. So what I was saying in general terms is actually going up here feeds in nicely to the bridleway here, or alternatively, the footway taking you back into the village. We did have a couple of concerns to the preliminary consultation we carried out. One was from a cycling group who did make some suggestions to make the route less larger change. That was looked into, and to be fair, the occupier actually did consider that, but it was completely impractical. The only actual, if you like, objection came from the Leicestershire Footpaths Association. They were invited to discuss it further at the meeting. I got an email from them a couple of days ago, and they just say, I've had a look at the report. It seems fair to me and I have nothing to add, so I don't plan to come to the meeting. I can see both sides of this, and it seems to be an on-balance decision. It's just a question of how much weight you give to each side. So I suppose that's a vindication of leaving it to yourselves in terms of making a decision on that. So as regards that, the recommendation remains to make the order and to then see what happens when we actually publish the order and see whether we receive any objections at that stage.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. Edwin, can you just not your mic on, please? Thank you, Edwin. Right, we do have a speaker on behalf of the applicant. So Louise Duffin from Fisher German LLP. So Louise, if you'd like to take a seat on the desk at the front, you will have 5 minutes in order to speak. Press the button on your microphone when you're ready to go, and Ewan will give you a 30-second notice. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just thought I would come along today and just represent the applicant. I think the fellow colleague there, he's probably summarised everything that I was going to say, but my involvement has been with the management of the Edmonthorpe estate and on behalf of the landowner who owns Church Farm, Stonycroft, and the adjacent agricultural land. We have consulted with the access officer, and we did all the preliminary checks with the the parish council, the Ramblers Association, and the Footpaths Association. I think from our perspective, this was the best solution to the problem that we've got with privacy and security. Just to add that at the side of Church Farmhouse, where footpath users go over the stile, it's actually 3 metres from the stone wall to the edge of the farmhouse, of which there are 2 windows that overlook the farmhouse and the footpath. These 2 windows are the kitchen and the sitting room of the property, so they are well serviced rooms in the property, hence the concerns with privacy at there. There is also the topography of the route. Once you go over the stile into the garden of Church Farmhouse, there is a steep incline up a bank where there's a hand gate that leads into Stonycroft as well, which is a concern for the landowner. So hopefully the proposal is relatively straightforward and will be favoured. There is this issue of the link between points A and down to the highway, which isn't a public right-of-way, but as we've said previously, the owner has enabled footpath users to go along there. I think in addition, you've mentioned that the owner would put in the stile at point F. There was also an area marked G on the plan. I don't know if you want to get that up, but Ellen Senior has requested that there's a depression in the grass field there, which sometimes gets muddy where there's an old ditch line, and the owner would put in either like some sleeper bridge or a culvert just to improve the accessibility along there. So all in all, we've considered everything that we can, and we've consulted with everybody. We feel that the link where it comes out in F, it does link with all the other footpaths in the village. We're aware of who's using the footpath. It isn't a regular footpath that I would say is used by residents in the village as sort of a regular daily dog walking route. It's generally, as you've said, people that are coming up into the village and they're moving in a north or northeasterly direction. So yes, and also there is the guidelines that you've referred to in respect of the DEFRA and for the local authority to consider security and safety of property owners. So if you've got any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. If you just stay there for a moment, is there any, Mr. Bannister?
Yes, thank you. You may have misspoken. I just want to clarify that when you referred to the applicant putting in a style at point F, you meant Kissing Gate.
Yes, apologies. It's a Kissing Gate that will be in point F, and that place was chosen as it's where the hedge is naturally thinner. And we also thought that between E and F, we need to give consideration to the other two properties, Stony Croft and the old rectory. So we felt that we weren't being too close to one as to the other. It was equidistant. So.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Any other questions from members? Mr. Charlesworth.
Yeah, and why now? Why not 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Is it because somebody's now living in that property that's adjacent to the footpath, or are the new owners, or?
So the ownership hasn't changed. There has been a long-term tenant in Church Farmhouse. They left 18 months ago, and it's just been brought to our attention more so. And as we've said as well, the occupation of Stony Croft and the security there and wanting to put a gate near point A, it's how we deal with this issue that we've got.
I just wanted to understand why.
Okay, thank you, Louise. I think you can return to the gallery. Thank you very much. Mr. Orson, board member, was going to speak, but he's unable to now. And Ewan has some comments that he wishes to advise members of.
Yeah, just Mr. Orson said he's happy with the officer's recommendation, and the reason he asked for it to come to board was because of the objection from the Footpath Association. But personally himself, he's happy with it.
Members, I open the floor. Mr. Coxon.
Yes, just probably a question for Edwin, really, is the usage of the footpath. Is it a well-used footpath, or is it just an occasional footpath, or for use, that is, Chairman?
We haven't got specific measurements, but yes, it is used, and it's used on a fairly regular basis. But as was alluded there, quite often this path, because of the nature of where it's pointing towards, it's used in that north-south axis to go up to Wymondon and that route. So there's a lot of through traffic, and it's been alluded there because there was those excellent loops around the village. They're used a lot by the local dog walkers and local walkers themselves. But yes, it is used, and actually, to fair credit to the occupier, people aren't challenged or anything on it. They're allowed to be used. There's no friction in that regard, a history of.
In that case, Chairman, then I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Coxon. Mr. Bannister.
Thank you. Yes, the diversion does appear to make sense for the reasons of ensuring better privacy and security at Church Farm, removing the incline as well, which may well be an impediment for some walkers. I did note the objection from the Leicestershire Footpath Association. They think it'll be a longer access for residents towards the village, but I note in the report that length of extra journey should be all of 2 minutes, so I don't think it's a huge burden, and I like the way it links up with the bridleway and the other footpaths around the area. So I'm happy to second Mr. Coxon's proposal to approve this.
Thank you, Mr. Bannister. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's always difficult when you come to these projects and the subject of diversion of a footpath, and particularly if it has some history to it. I can remember probably a year back now, probably more, where there was a similar sort of item brought to this board. And And I just remember that how close they could get to the windows of that property. So security now, privacy is a nice word, but it's really security. Do you feel safe? Are people able to walk up? The problem is that people with dogs, they have them on leads, but the old-fashioned idea, a lead was about 3 foot. These are about 20 foot now, and even dogs are let loose. So there's lots of issues. So I think this is a really good sense solution. I think it's a good attitude to have on it, because it does add security to there. It does create a more opened process through than what you've got here. So, yeah, I shall support it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick detail question for Edwin. Looking at the map on page 41, which shows the wayposts. So there's a waypost at point E, then another waypost at point G. Just a question, is it worth or would it be beneficial to also have a waypost at point C, where E53 diverts from its existing course onto the new course? Thank you, Chair.
Firstly, I'll take a note of that. It may well have been covered, I have to say, because there are other works than just the Kissing Gate, the signage works in particular. I just haven't gone into those details, but I'll pass that on to the case officer and do that. And I don't know whether it's worth, forgive me, Chair, but I just thought it'd be useful for members to update them as regards the reasoning for that guidance from government, or what may be coming up shortly, which they may be involved in that, or shall I leave that till after that we discuss this matter?
That's not on the agenda. I think that would be quite useful. Is it fairly short?
Very short.
Yeah.
It's just to say that the reason for that guidance is that is the way government is minded on these matters. Now, you may have seen over Christmas, and I won't go into any detail on this, that the government has potentially suspended the cut-off date for extinguishing highways that are not formally recorded. And that's a fairly major item. But there is other legislation associated with that, which will also be going through the legislation relating to diversion orders. And I suspect this the privacy aspects and the security aspects will be hard coded into that legislation at that stage. So it's something that's moving forward, if you like. And at the moment, when I say to you, is it less convenient or is it in the interest of? That's because that's what's in the legislation at the moment. So really, that guidance is going to be incorporated into the legislation in the not too distant future, I suspect.
Thank you, Edwin. I think that's a really useful piece of information. So, Mr. Lovegrove.
A very quick one, Chairman. Have history in the Beaver division of footpaths being diverted and moved. And then there's a real challenge with people using the old footpath. Are there any measures in place to put signs up or indicate? I know there'll be the way markers, but after decades of a footpath being used, people still use the old one, and that does cause some aggravation and disputes.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lovegrove. Edwin, you could answer, or I've got Louise nodding over there.
The signage you were mentioning, I was mentioning a bit earlier, is something that will be put in. But yes, we do also have path now diverted signs to go at the beginning end. The question is how long they stay there. But signage will be very important, and that will be alongside the other stuff when the new works go in.
Okay, thank you, Edwin. Any further question from members? Okay, so the officer's recommendation is to approve the order be made under section 119 of the Highways Act 1980. We have a proposer, we have a seconder. Can I have a vote on all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, Louise. The application to make the order is approved. Thank you very much. Agenda item 8 is any other items that the Chairman has decided to take as urgent. There are no other urgent items. The agenda item 9 is my announcements. The only other announcement I have to make is that the next meeting of this board is on the 13th of February 2025, 2 p.m, most likely in this room. Thank you, members. Safe travels home.